Hey guys, it's Marshall here with you, and I'm going to do a quick video. This one's not going to be long at all. It's probably just going to be one video long of the changes in the new version 1.8 of the Legend Spawn plugin. So what I've got here on the screen is the package for the Legend Spawn plugin 1.8, and we're just going to run through the setup and show you what's different, um, and hopefully all will go well. The first thing I want to mention is that if you run the toolset as your regular user account, just double click on the setup or just put these files in the proper directories manually. However, if you do run your toolset as your administrator, for those of you that have UAC running, then you're going to want to right click on the setup and run that as administrator. And that's what I do because I'm running mine as administrator. So we shall do that. So I'm just going to run through the setup wizard. I'm just going to hit next and install. And it's pretty straightforward installation process. All that's happening is it's putting the PDFs on your desktop, the ERF in your Neverwinter Nights 2 ERF folder, and the DLLs in the plugins folder. Just saves you the trouble of having to do it by hand. And done. So once you've got that installed, just run the tool set. Again, I run this as administrator as well. One thing to note that if you have a previous version of the Spawn plugin, you're going to want to try and either uninstall it or just remove the DLL files so this new one can install, because the installer has changed, so it's not going to detect your old version anymore. And yeah, so we're going to uninstall and then reinstall this fresh one. Now it's not going to do anything to your module by doing that, so no worries there. So what we've got is a brand new module. So we're going to just run, well, the first thing you do, as always, is you import the ERFs. So I happen to have the ERF right here. Now, if you are upgrading an existing one, it's going to prompt you. It's going to say, yes, there's resources that already exist. Do you want to overwrite them? Say yes to all of them when you're doing an upgrade. And once you've got your resources, the first thing you'll have to do is have your resources in here. And you'll notice if you're not upgrading, you won't have a constants file. I've noticed a few people on the forum saying, hey, where's the constants file? I try to compile my scripts and it fails to compile. And you're right, it will fail to compile because you're not finished installing it yet. So you'll notice that it's missing some constants files. That's by design. The reason is because once you configure your plugins, it will create a constants file for you, and you don't want the installer, when you install the ERF, to overwrite your configuration, so it doesn't come with any. So when you're doing a brand new module, it won't have any in it. And what you'll do is you'll run the actual master configurator, turn your Spawn plugin on. Again, the Spawn plugin doesn't use any database stuff, so you can leave that blank. Don't forget to update your module scripts if you haven't done that in the past. Nothing has changed here with that stuff. So that's that. So if you're upgrading, you don't need to worry about that. Just double check that it's active and hit the finish button there. Then you fire up the Spawn plugin itself. Now this is something you will want to do. Go File, Configuration. You'll notice right away that this is now different. The spawn frequencies, there's more of them. So you're gonna notice that when you open this the first time, these defaults may have overwritten your old ones. That just change them to whatever you would normally have and hit finish. But this is something you have to do with the 1.8. You have to commit to this configuration. You can either change these or leave them, but you have to actually come in and hit the finish button. So once you've got that done, you're ready to go. You've upgraded. Now, if you go File, Compile All Scripts, you won't get any errors. Because what's happened is the constant scripts get generated during that configuration, so you're good now. All right, so the next thing you're going to want to do is create a quick little area here. Well, this is what I'm going to do, just to demonstrate some of the changes. And I'm going to go over here to my waypoints. I'm just doing this on the other screen here. I'm just grabbing a waypoint just so I can edit one. And then I'm going to fire up the spawn plugin on it. And then I'm going to select File, Edit, Waypoint Instance. So it's very familiar, not a ton of changes here, but there are some differences. And the first difference that you're going to notice is that there's no longer an Update Scripts button here. You don't have to do this anymore. The system is smart enough now that you don't actually have to do this anymore. What's going to happen is if once you're finished, it's going to check the creatures or the placeables you put in here and see if it needs script changes. If it does, it's going to make those changes. If not, it'll just leave them as is. Any of your regular scripts will remain intact. It'll just make a copy of your script and modify it if it has to. If it doesn't, it'll just leave it. So that's the first change you'll notice. One of the next big changes you'll notice is there's a new spread option. This is called one spawn per point. And what this means is that when you create a group of waypoints for random spawning, and if you go through the original spawn plugin videos, it'll discuss creating groups of waypoints. You can have different spreads. The new one here is one spawn per point. What this means is that only one creature or placeable object will spawn at each waypoint at the most. So for example, if I create an area with 15 different waypoints in a group, and I have one creature or one placeable object in here, or even two or three, what'll happen is those two or three creatures or placeable objects will spawn at one of the waypoints randomly, but it will only spawn at one of them. So once the first, if you have three goblins in here, for example, the first guy will spawn at a waypoint, it'll randomly choose one. And then what'll happen is the second guy will spawn at one of the other ones, and then the third guy will spawn at one of the other ones. They'll never spawn two at a waypoint. There'll always be one maximum per point. And it'll stay that way until one of the creatures or placeables dies or destroyed. And then that spawn point is available once again for something to spawn at it. So one spawn per point lets you set something like that up. That's kind of handy if you have like a quest or something to find a placeable object, and that placeable object, or maybe you have to find 5 placeable objects around an area, 5 flowers or something like that, and you could create 15 different locations and have a quantity of like 5 of a flower or something, and then have those 5 flowers spawn around the map in different places, but only have 1 flower maximum, so you won't have like 2 or 3 flowers at one point. It'll only be ever one of them at a time. So that'll be that new feature. The next new option you'll find is this no exit despawn. So when you have this checkbox on, normally when all the players leave an area, all the creatures and NPCs and whatnot despawn in it, and the reason for that is to save on server resources, so you're not chewing up resources when there's no players there. Player re-enters an area, they'll all spawn back in. What this means is that even if there's no players in the area, the creatures or NPCs or whatever will not respawn regardless. So they'll stay alive, they'll stay spawned. So you don't actually have to respawn them. The system won't respawn them, they'll just stay there. So that's kind of handy if you have a town with a whole bunch of NPCs and you just don't want them to despawn. You just want them to stick around and do things even though there's no one in the area. And as you've probably noticed, that when you do enter an area the first time, there is a delay. There is several seconds before all the creatures and NPCs do spawn. So if you don't want to have to wait for that, you log in, you spawn them once, and then they stay there, kind of thing. So it's just an option, and you can do that on a per waypoint basis. So that's the no exit on despawn. And lastly, we do have one more feature. Now you can actually see it. here because you have to have the Legends Loot plugin installed. But what happens is if you've got the Legends Loot plugin installed, there's a checkbox right here. And what this checkbox says is that if this placeable object is actually a loot placeable that is using the Legends Loot plugin, you can check that checkbox on. And what that basically means is that once you check that checkbox on, you're creating a link between the spawn plugin and the loot plugin. And what you can do some interesting things with that checkbox on. Typically, when you're doing, and we'll get more into that in the loot plugin itself, when you create, placeable chests and things like that in the loot plugin, you'll be modifying a blueprint over in your blueprint stable, and you'll configure that blueprint, that chest or whatever, to have, X amount of gold spawn in it, for example. Now, if you have the spawn plugin with the loot plugin, what you can do is you can actually use the loot plugin to configure a spawn point. And when you do that, you could have a generic chest for the placeable object with no configuration on it, and actually configure this waypoint to spawn your chest and also manage the loot that gets spawned in that chest too. So you could actually use the same blueprint chest for a whole bunch of different kinds of loot and actually configure the waypoint with the loot configuration on it. So when you do something like that, there's a checkbox that'll appear here that'll turn that function on. So we'll get more into that. You'll see that because when we demonstrate the loot plugin, we're actually going to bring the spawn plugin along with for the ride and actually show that stuff. So those are the new features in 1.8. There shouldn't be any issues with upgrading your existing spawn points. There's nothing you'll have to do except just go into the file configuration and hit that, and adjust these numbers if necessary and hit that finish. But other than that, everything else should upgrade cleanly. So that's it. If you have any questions, you can reach me on my website at nwn2legends.com. Thanks for watching.